Good evening and welcome to the South African Equestrian Federation's podcast From the Horse's Mouth. I'm your host, Georgie Roberts, and tonight I'm going to be interviewing the president of the South African National Equestrian Schools Association. That is Jan Joubert, who has joined us here this evening. School sports, very hot topic, always in the equestrian sport, a wonderful opportunity for us to develop our young athletes, but lots to discuss in that sphere. So, Jan, thank you very much for joining us here this evening, making the groot trek from Pretoria tonight.
Georgie, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you
you
for the SAF making this whole podcast so many programs. That was so good for all of us. We highly appreciate it, and thank you that we can speak about SANESA.
Yes, well, thank you for joining us. So, Jan, before we carry on to discuss SANESA and how SANESA was formed, can we talk a little bit about you and your very passionate involvement in the equestrian industry?
Yes, welcome. My children started to ride SANESA in Tshwane, in Gauteng, and I breed boerperde, and I got a boerperd stud. So, yes, we thought...
Which came first, the children riding or the boerperd stud?
We had the boerperd stud.
Oh, so you had to have children to ride the boerperde. Is that
yes, and I said that they can only ride if they can ride properly.
Oh, nice.
So we sent them for lessons, and then, it was the first shows where we started to participate because it's multidiscipline. And our breed is multidiscipline. So, it was a natural fit for us. And that's how we got involved in SANESA. And we still breed. My children's out of school. Mine, Christelle, and they're still riding. So it's a family passion, and we're very passionate about SANESA. It was always the primary sport at school. And it is, we're loyal to SANESA, and that's why I'm still there.
But thank you. How long have you been involved with SANESA for now?
Now, my children started primary school. They're both finished with university now.
Jeez.
So, it's in excess of 12 years that I'm involved from a parent to...
Two presidents.
Yeah, it's always good to take the president position after your children has left, because otherwise you could be criticized at your wives.
Absolutely. That was very tactful. But thank you for staying involved in the sport. I think everyone who I tend to speak to on the podcast is giving freely of their time and commitment and passion to the sport because they love it.
Thank you.
So that's really important. So how and why was SANESA formed originally?
Now, we were blessed that our predecessors formed it. A lady by the name of Marlene du Plessis had the vision. In 2006, my homework is what the first SANEF Schools show was held.
Wow, okay.
And it was in Gauteng.
So it's almost 20 years that we're heading on for. That's great.
And today it's in all the provinces. It's for 15 disciplines.
Wow, that's expensive.
So it's only the highly team disciplines of what the SAF offers that we don't offer. Okay. For instance, polo cross, tent pegging.
That makes sense.
But all the others. And we have a requirement, being a member of the SAF, that a discipline can only approach SANESA that we offered, subject to that the SAF approve the discipline.
Okay.
Because we're not rule makers of the discipline, how the kids must compete, we're rule takers. So we ride and...
So basically, you can take a discipline that has its existing structure and rules and then apply that within the SANESA parameters.
Yes, we only change or make proposals jointly with the discipline to address the educational principles. In other words, there must be levels of participating, and that's all over school sports. You have under 14F in the big rugby schools, and you have their first team.
Yes.
And there must be a place for everybody. Everybody can't be a high-performance athlete, and you can't offer a school sport if you don't comply with those basic principles. You must go out of your way to take away discrimination in any form. Financially, how they must be dressed. Yes, at the highest level, the open graded level, the discipline's open graded rules apply. But at the lead rein level, or the level 0 level, or 1, 2, 3, we have, if you go into the SANESA webpage, we have specific rules which adhere to the Department of Education's principles. But we never change the principles, the core principles of the discipline. How you score a prelim test, how you score a novice.
And you do, in fact, use judges from, for example, you're talking about dressage, you do use judges from dressage.
Exclusively.
Yeah.
We never used any other judges because all our classes, which could be graded, we offered a graded component of a graded standard of the class. For instance, if 90 at primary school is graded jumping, the judging, the course, everything, how the course is built by accredited course builders is done in such a way that those kids that want to participate on a graded scenario, that those classes count as graded. So
that's great.
All our classes in all 15 disciplines is offered at graded quality right through the country.
That's great. That really opens up those barriers to entry.
Yes, and let's say in the countryside, let's take Mpumalanga or the Northern Cape, where there's not a big opportunity for the open side to have graded shows. And that number of children participating on a Saturday and a Sunday and even Friday afternoon is not such a high volume. We offer that show, a component of the show, for adults to participate on a graded level.
That's lovely.
To make sure that cost is shared. And because we have the graded judges there, the graded venue, and all of that. And that's how that. Yeah, we take hands. It's not practical in Gauteng. And that's why a lot of people in our sport don't know it, because SANESA and Gauteng is big. We offer it per region. It's one way, Gauteng West, Ekurhuleni, the regions. There's not time left to offer the graded component, but there's not a big need because Easter Festival, we've
got a lot going on. We're very lucky.
But you don't have that in the countryside. If you add on a graded show, a graded jumping show, a graded equitation show, if you add those up, we offer in excess of 474 graded shows in a year right through the country.
That's great. That's very nice for development.
And it's only judged by the discipline's judges according to the discipline's rules. In other words, if the discipline says we allow 2 jumping classes on a day per horse, we don't allow the children to participate on more than 2 pure jumping classes. Or the discipline say on the highest level, 1 dressage class. The child can only ride on a day 1 dressage class, or at the prevent level, they can ride 2. And that's how we offer. But never more than 4 ridden classes on a day on a horse rider combination.
Okay, so they could do 2 dressage, 2 jumping, or a dressage, a jumping, a showing.
Yes.
Okay.
So the interest of the horse and how the horse is utilized and how many classes the horse rides, take into account the warm-up and all of that. We apply the strictest rules from the disciplines right through. The only instances where they can go to 5 classes max is when they have an in-hand utility class.
And those are exhausting for the children as well. So
they walk next to the horse. And remember, we offer this from lead rein up to level 7. Right through the whole spectrum of the development world of our children.
So that's for primary school and for high school?
Yes, and excuse me, and pre-primary, the lead train children.
Yes,
in the year that they turn 4, they could participate in lead train classes.
Wow.
So all of those schools are registered.
They're kind of holding the child up on the pony while they're leading the pony.
Yes, and the mum and dad love to dress up and
little Barbies.
Be proud about it. So our members is schools, but we don't charge a school to join. So let's say there's a new boy in Helpmekaar High that want to start horse riding, and Helpmekaar High is not registered. We get the official documentation from the school. We load that as a member on our system. And then under the school, that school is represented by the riders.
Okay.
And
that
we
makes sense.
provide an inter-school league.
So mimicking the other sports
Yes.
that you would normally have within the school day or curriculum outside.
Yes. For instance, let's take rugby or cricket. Rugby would compete against Grey High, which have a lot of rugby teams. If you in office you compete, they compete to each other because of size, number of teams. So we, on a yearly basis, keep record of the schools in a competition basis, based on the number of competitors for that school. So all the schools that have 3 riders compete within a region or within a province against each other.
Yes.
And
It's
then
A, B, C, D.
Yes,
E, F. Yes.
yes.
I actually did the awards at Bolu College for, I don't know if it was Gauteng in general or if it was
Gauteng
Central.
yes.
And it was the first time
there
I'd
could be
seen that.
Yeah.
So there was the A League, which were riders with schools with over however many hundred of
Yes.
riders. And
Horse
then,
rider combinations.
yes, yeah. And it was wonderful to realize that you creating an equitable platform for the schools to compete against each other as well. So you're not having Bolu College competing against Helpmacar, who's,
Yes.
that I thought that was
Yes.
really interesting.
And that brings an environment where a child or a rider, or athlete, have a fair chance to compete. And it's always horse rider combination. Because why? Maybe my dad have the money to buy me 4 horses.
Oh, that's
And
nice. Okay.
but I can only ride the 4 classes of my school pony. And so I
You nominate a horse.
I compete on my horse rider combination of my school pony against one of the horse rider combinations of that child that have the benefit of 3 or 4 horses. And it is really a fair system. It is really
It's making it a lot more fair.
Yes.
And it is an unfair sport. I just want to be clear. I'm never the one who's going to say that it's, but that seems to be a way of equalizing the playing fields as much as possible.
And then, for instance, as I just said, based on the rules per level, it's like the research. On the highest level, you need white pants, you need, on the highest level, white gloves. Those requirements to look the part, to be based on the rules, what the discipline requires from you. But prelim, we do allow that you can come in with your custard-colored riding pants because you're just showing. Or you can ride with your school pants and your school
blazer.
Shoes and school blazer. Because we need to go out of our way to take away discrimination. And discrimination is not what we think in South Africa as color or things like that. It's discrimination, especially in our sport, based on my ability to enjoy the sport. Remember,
look, affordability is a very real, very big barrier to entry in equestrian sport.
I am astonished at the level of quality and skill of children that don't have all the opportunities. If you stand around the arenas and you look at really quality riders, it's something which our sport is lacking. If there's a hockey tournament that just happened here in Joburg, there's scouts of the professional hockey league around the arena and how the kids are playing, and they are scouting the talents of the future. What a nice day would it be if big stats, which employ people to train their horses, which is now sold on very famous auctions, sit around our arena and scout those children, which got all the talent, but just not the opportunity. There's such a lot of highly skilled riders which prefer horse riding or equitation or equestrian to be their sport. Normally, it's young ladies or
yes, it's always the
girls.
dream to have a pony, right?
Yes, and they're so passionate. They don't want to do.
So is Roy Stud going to start just pushing out a whole bunch of?
If I compete at our national championship, I quite often ask a quality rider, which I know, and said, please come and ride for us. Because I know the talent and I've seen it. And I've seen the quality. And those children love it.
It's such a feather in their cap.
My children is now adults. We compete in under 8, under 11, under 15 classes. You know, I need to, I have a lookout to say, sure, look at this quality under 15 or under 11 rider and look how good they are. And we do provide horses for those, sometimes for those riders to participate. But I think a principle where our sport is lacking is we don't make enough effort to identify those real talent and provide them with an opportunity. I had a conversation with Showing. I said to Showing, how it now works is if a child wants to be in a graded environment, they pay a level, we collect it, we pay it over to the Showing, because remember our classes is now graded, and then their points is accumulated, and then they could be eligible for Showing South Africa's under 15 and 18 teams.
Oh, that's
so
great.
We do that now.
Okay.
But I said to Showing, why don't you provide for a child that's never been in the graded environment? Why don't you take a record of all the children's performance? Then you have an opportunity to identify real talent, because if there's at the level 5, which is a novice open level, a child that's consistently winning in the school graded environment, in other words, under a school Showing judge, and it's consistently he or she winning the class, surely that must be talent. And we want to work with the disciplines.
That's
for
great.
them to grab that talent.
And develop it.
Yes, and make it, because that is how sport works. You must go into the development world, you must identify talent, you must look after it, you must make it a success.
And Jan, going into that, what is the relationship between SANESA and the disciplines? So you've already said you've got this wonderful grading opportunity where you can feed through the points that the children accumulate, which I think is fantastic. And additionally, the reciprocal part of that is that you use the disciplines rules, you use tests and regulations and courses and things. Is there any further engagement between there that we need to know about?
We have a national exec, according to our constitution, and they are like the board of directors that make sure that the structures that's elected in the provinces are complying with what their rules is. Okay. Within that structure of the national exec, there's people responsible for each discipline. There's a person
that's great.
responsible for showing, for dressage, for jumping. And on a yearly basis, normally between November and January, we have a memo of understanding with every discipline. And we sign off jointly, and we scan it into our system. It is their public knowledge that everybody can go in and see.
And this is on your website
on
as
our
well.
webpage,
The website's pretty comprehensive.
And it's there so that everybody can see that we do our utter best to take hands with the discipline and understand each other and understand where to work better together. For instance, a burning issue now is the grading that jumping provides. They do provide us grading for the SANESA, but they don't include it in the ranking order of the jumpers.
Okay.
So I would think if I can bring a child which is not graded and rank those classes and see that he's consistently winning the meter class, there is a massive opportunity to bring him into the grading opportunity world. So there's things like that which we work with. There is issues from Jumping South Africa and what we must do. For instance, what we did in the last 2 years, we split SANESA classes between ponies and horses. So for instance, for 90s, we have now 2 classes.
Okay.
And it's massive additional classes. But it is a requirement of the graded environment to say, this is how we run our sport. Yes, there's relative distances, all of that, we understand it. And therefore, we went the extra mile and said, okay, just imagine what we do on a Saturday. We have 2 90s, high school, ponies and horses. Then we have primary, ponies and horses. Okay, because you can't discriminate against a child.
No, they've got to.
If mother buy me a horse, which I can handle, then he must have the opportunity to participate. We really sit on a yearly basis and see what we can do to be better, to be closer, to provide that opportunity where the graded environment can say, these guys are really providing us the future of, and I brought
How
a
can we
list.
come together instead of
Yes,
fighting?
yes.
How can we collaborate?
And we are a council member of the SAF, so we adhere to
Like welfare issues.
welfare issues and all of that. Just remember things like, for instance, doping. We have children younger than 30. Now, there's special ways how you handle doping
With a
drug
minor.
with a minor. We must just always have the educational side of it in context.
True.
And protect the child because he doesn't know what's happened with the horse at the riding school and all of that. But we have live discussions
So
with
there are
the
different
SAF,
considerations.
yes, to make sure that we do things correct and that we have complied with from governance, how we do elections in SANESA, how we do finance, when we publish our financial statements. We are a registered national non-profitable organization.
Yeah.
So all of that, the new initiative which you had in your previous podcast, last week's one, about how do we handle bullying?
Yes.
How do we handle discrimination? It's not only between children, it's between adults and children.
It's between adults and adults, which is the worst.
Yes. And how do we handle the coaching issue? You understand? It's any child's constitutional right. Mum and dad don't have money. Dad, please just help me to participate in this riding school to enjoy the sport. How do we handle that? How do we make sure that coaching, which is a challenge in our total sport?
It's throughout the sport,
It's
and you and I were
without the
discussing
sport.
this earlier on, is that
Yes.
there's things going wrong at every level. But can we do better across the sport? Yes. But how are we
Always.
going to do it?
Always. And how do you make sure that children have the freedom to enjoy their horse and then have
Within
the
a
dream,
safe, fun boundary.
yes, and have the dream to make this them sport. And if mum and dad don't have the means to buy the best horse, how can I be so good that those people that have the means employ me to ride the horse? And there's examples like that right through our sport.
I'm hearing also lots of collaboration from you, Jan, which I really love. So saying there is dialogue between you and the disciplines. There's dialogue between you and SAEF. And we were talking about the coaching before we went live on air. That I know certainly from speaking to Regular, who's the new national lead. She said, I want the moms and dads to come on board. So I think there hopefully is coming a shift where instead of Regular also said we're very divisive in the sport.
Yes.
It tends to be us and them.
Yes.
We're trying to remove those barriers. And I think children is as good a place as any to incite that start, hopefully.
Some people sometimes ask, what do we plow back from SANESA side? You know, we are a non-profitable organization. We have no annual membership fee. The only way to make this world go around is by entry fees.
No, it's
82
everyone costs money. Venues cost money.
82% of every cent that we earn or that we collect on behalf of entry fees is plowed back into making the show work, paying for the venues, paying for these assistants,
Registered judges,
paying their transport, paying them what they ask us. Compare that to the rest of the industry. If you have a discussion with Mr. Barry Hendricks, which is very close to us, the chairman of SASCOC, he was very involved with us. And when he was the chairman of Sports Council in Gauteng, we had a very, very close relationship. And he embraced us. And he said, you know what is normally happening? The sport pays for their development arms costs. In our sport, it's a different way around. We're not complaining. We're just saying, if we could make all the entries for free, we could have had more children enjoying our sport. Still, the most cost-effective way, the parent can handle the cost on a day, tracking, transporting, taking the child to a show, and he can ride or she can ride 4 classes. At an average cost in Pretoria, in Gauteng, 265 rand a class, all inclusive. In some provinces, we go as low as 240. There's one province that's a bit higher, 280. That is the cost for the child to participate. And he can participate 265 rand per class, 4 a day, 4 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday, and really enjoy his horse riding. Be able to show he can ride, he can jump, he can do dressage. And we always said children must be able to do everything in the sport when they're young before they specialize.
They have to
Yes.
they have to play first and experiment.
And maybe they don't have a good jumping coach and they're better in dressage, or vice versa, or they don't enjoy jumping where it's at the highest speed over all the jumps. They like equitation, which is complementing manners and style and those things. So we need children to be able to do a multidiscipline show and later specialize. They always have the right.
Absolutely.
They always have the right, take into account either I can't afford it or whatever.
So I think what you're also saying is it's easy for us to come with a high performance hat on.
Yes.
And either criticize or say, well, this is, but looking at it through that high performance lens, when what SANESA is really doing is fulfilling our development mandate for the sport.
It is the only place in the sport where a child can ride from level 0 to level 7. It's actually a pity that it doesn't exist for adults. There's a lot of my friends that just enjoy horse riding. That is not that a meter 150, 120, 1 meter jumping. I just want to do 90.
I've got some adult pupils who have said Pre-Caprilli looks great. They just want to do one jump.
They just want to do it. So it is a great environment where every child can participate. But we are complying with, as I said, graded venues, graded judges, marshals, which understand how it works. Let's take marshals. We provide for all our high-density shows here in Gauteng, marshals in the warm-up area. We haven't done it for one show, and we were exposed on Facebook. So we corrected it, and we apologize. But it's a requirement of the highest level in the graded
I just want to
way.
say that's a lovely way also to deal with conflict, is to fix it and apologize.
Yes, and it was just something by oversight. Remember, we deal with 6-year-olds and 8-year-old children. Right shoulder to left shoulder. I'm just riding, you know, and I'm a child. And quite often, I was the weekend at the Easter show. It does happen sometimes in adult classes, also in the warm-up. It does. We're all humans. We're all humans. And we don't do it, I will be spiteful. We just do it with the best possible intention to enjoy my horse. And yes, it's like driving. We need rules. But sometimes some people go over the 60 limit in town. It's not right. It's just practical sometimes. It's not the right way to drive. And it needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
And there need to be rules.
So Jan, when it comes to those issues of like safety and whatever, how do the rules get implemented in SANESA? Like, you know, so if a pupil does come on, is there any fundamental way for them to access things like warm-up arena etiquette, or is that lying then with the responsibility of the coaches?
We do our utter best on social media.
Oh, that's good.
On our system. If you go into our system, there's rules. There's
fantastic. Oh, that's great.
Per discipline, per level.
Okay.
You can go in there. How am I supposed to dress? How am I supposed to ride? Will I be judged? What's the rules of the discipline? So
the SANESA website is a one-stop portal for people. They don't need to go and...
They are all there, but we know they don't do it. So it's quite often we publish on Facebook, you know, with the necessary pictures and things like that. What is the most preferred, perfect way to be dressed? But sometimes we get criticized and say, you don't paint a picture for a child which hasn't got the means to be perfectly dressed, which is true. So arena as how to ride in a warm-up arena. We send mails out.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
We send mails out. We active on Facebook, but we still need a child and a trainer to comply and to want to do that.
I think I read a quote the other day, which I loved, that said, never before in an age where technology and information is so accessible have we seen so many people not embracing it. And I think that's, the SAEF has also, someone said the one day, well, I haven't seen anything about whatever, I didn't see a news flash and I went, because I'm sometimes also guilty of saying, well, I didn't see that. Emails in the inbox, it's unopened. There was something on social media. So there are lots of channels, I think, that people also need to willfully engage with to find the information that they require.
I can't agree more. We have in our environment, we have one sanesa.co.za. All the children registered there. All the shows are open there in the scheduling. The running order is published only there, not on any other forum. The results is only published there, not on any other forum. It's our official communication. Our official emails goes out from there. So we try to do what we think is wise to minimize the cost and to centralize communication, know-how, skill. So there's contact persons of every elected person per region.
So if someone was also having like a query or something, there's a contact list that they could pick up the phone and phone somebody for advice.
My details is there.
Okay, great.
We got 4.
Oh, yeah, and that's a slippery slope. You shouldn't have told people that.
We got 4 fully employed, full-time employed employees in our structure.
That's great.
That handle from finance.
That handle parents.
And parents and everything. And then they're
underpaid. I don't know how much you pay them, but I know they're underpaid.
We got 114 elected positions in our structure.
Oh.
Now may I share how it works?
Yes, that's great.
You can only be elected in a position if the school, remember the school is our member. If the school say, I was the elected, or I was the school responsible person for Garsfontein High when my daughters were in the high school. So the headmaster decided that I was the person responsible for the equine sport in Garsfontein. He officially gave notice to SANESA. Jan Joubert, under his signature, have the right to speak on equine-related sport issues in your structure. Nobody else could speak on behalf of the school.
So you've got representatives for the schools, you've got representatives for the disciplines.
All the schools.
Okay.
Every school.
That's great.
So on a yearly basis, according to our constitution, there's the election process. So there must be, according to our quorum requirements, people, as I just described, sitting in the AGM and saying, for Tshwane, all the schools there, use the example that happened to me, Jan is elected as the chairman of Tshwane. And there's another person representing Menlo Park or Girls High or whatever school. That committee is formed Tshwane and run Tshwane. According to this centralized system, very strict guidelines how to run a show.
So it's completely constitutionally
100%.
Sound. Okay.
That nomination process can be audited every year. The election process of the meetings can be audited every year. We keep records. So nobody can say this is not done properly. But we have the requirement to do it properly according to the SAF. And we can't be in charge or responsible for children, and we don't set the example how to do things correct. So that committee have a chair. That chair sits on the Gauteng committee that run the whole Gauteng. And the Gauteng chair with the Natal chair or the Northern Cape chair
or the provincial
is the provincial council, and they are checked and controlled by the national exec, as I just described. So all shows, remember, from every show we have a training show component and a graded show component. Every cent goes through one centralized bank account. Every cent. all entries, all expenses. And it's audited on a yearly basis.
So everything's accounted for, everything's...
100%. And then we are registered MPO. So if we on a yearly basis see a non-profitable organization got surplus available, we subsidize provinces according to the distance to come to a national championship, normally during the October holidays, normally in Gauteng. Why Gauteng? There's only one kip that's big enough to handle for a week long, normally from a Tuesday to a Saturday, every day, all the arenas. It's
Pumps. I've been there.
And it's proud to see that.
I think it's also interesting to note that there are quite a few countries who will host their national championships every year at the same venue. And it's very fortunate for the people who live next door and for the people who live 24 hours across the state or the country. It's a little less convenient, but the subsidy again, I think there are consistent steps being made to create equality in the sport there.
Yes, Gauteng's entries, I said, it's 265, and the rest of the bulk of the provinces is 240. So Gauteng pays a bit more, by about 50% of the entries, so that there is a bit surplus, which we plow back for those other provinces to come and ride. We're not in Gauteng because it's Gauteng. We're in Gauteng because only we got one kip, which can handle the volume. That is really the requirement.
And how many, offhand, sorry, I'm throwing this at you, we didn't discuss it. How many horses and children come to nationals every year?
We ride 3,800 classes.
Jeez. That's just 3,000. Yeah, that's great.
So
that's really opening it up.
Yes, and remember, we have a
And how many schools nationally?
About 680 that compete.
Okay.
Some schools have a rider that enter but don't participate the whole year. So there's 800 registered schools last year.
Okay.
Remember, we provide an inter-school league, but we also provide an environment where a school child can go and ride his horse. So there's the selection criteria for provincial teams. Let's take Gauteng as a good example because I know it very good. You have on the core league, which is normally the FEI type or the English riding styles. Let me handle that as an example. You have 4 qualifying shows, of which 3, your best 3 results count for you to be selected for the team to first represent your district and then represent your province, and if you make it there, to go and ride at nationals. If a child hasn't got a dream to be in this highly competitive environment to comply with the selection criteria, you can come and ride 2 shows. You don't need to ride all 4. That's how we blend a child that is riding this because he wants to represent his school in the inter-school league.
And get school colours.
And get school colours and be the best in his game and be its primary sport and be the national champion. That we got children that has this dream and start with their first qualifier and end in October adding up the best 6 scores and say, I'm the Victoria of the South African of SANESA at high school. We have those dreams and there's children competing for that. But there's also children that just want to go when dad and mum can afford it and ride 2 training shows at the right standard, normally during the first 7.
If their friends are going.
With their friends.
I think also what you haven't touched on yet is you said that one child can ride 4 classes today and 4 classes tomorrow with the same horse. But equally, you could actually have 8 kids each doing a class on the same horse. Is that correct?
No.
On the same can they not? It's
no.
So they don't share riding school ponies.
If they share, they must decide. The horse can only do 4.
Yes, so could 4 children do a class each,
yes,
for example?
They could.
And that, for me, I think is actually also really great because you now would be splitting. You could be splitting a horse's cost.
You could be.
Between the kids. And I think I've seen, which I know is part of the criticism that has come with SANESA, is riding school ponies coming in. But as somebody who has a very soft spot for riding schools myself, riding schools, and Regula said it herself as well, they are the foundation of the sport. So including them and bringing them in and letting that kind of dynamic happen is essential from a development, and letting those kids come in and do their one class because that's what they can afford.
Yes.
And share a pony because that's
Yes.
what they can afford.
Yes.
Is really essential.
Remember, a lot of us in Gauteng thinks of these English riding classes. For instance, dressage, jumping, equitation, those. One of the biggest growth is, for instance, in a discipline like Western Mountain Games, especially in the countryside.
It's quite fun.
If you go there and you see how from adults to juniors, and when Farnes and what's his wife's name first came to us and said, we want to include SANESA in this. And I remember their first nationals at the old Misty Meadows. And I visited this year, Western Mountain Games Nationals. And I visited, beginning of the year, they qualify in Limpopo at Balambala. You see children enjoying their horses in a different way. It's not the way that showing works or jumping works.
It's not right or wrong.
It's not right, and they enjoy their horses. And the growth in those disciplines were massive.
I think what's interesting, though, Jan, is that the discipline approached you and said, so that also this notion that I think any conversations in horse sport don't need to be one-sided.
Yes.
If we spoke in safeguarding, if you see something, say something. And I think if there are any issues that are arising, the way to handle it is with open, authentic dialogue to find a solution.
We approached reining this year, end of last year.
Yeah.
We said, we don't see the numbers growing. And we want to see it grow. And we want to have a session. What can we do to mutually make sure that those kids, for which that sport is their horse riding sport, how can we take hands to let it grow? Because we just saw a static number of children riding it. And there was such a good reaction. So let's do this, let's do that, let's do this and this qualifiers, let's change the tests into this international environment of test selection. How can we make it better to address all the levels? Mounted archery, young sport. I don't even know if everybody listening to us understand the sport and have seen it. It's probably the sport from which SANESA has delivered to that discipline the most number of Protea riders, percentage-wise, of all. Because there's just children, which got very good horses, which is got exceptional temperament, and that discipline took hands as a young discipline, identifying talent, and there's extremely high percentage and number of children, which is school children, which were awarded Protea colours in mounted archery. And such a compliment to that discipline, which just...
For really taking it and running with it.
And making it. And
wonderful.
So what I wanted to say, a lot of growth in this is what we call additional disciplines, like eventing, like Western Mounted Games, like English Mounted Games, those disciplines. A school that excel in the horse-rider combination would go to either the dressage riders or the jumpers and say, are you doing eventing? Won't you love to do that? Because there is...
It's a clever way to expand it and grow.
There is exceptional competition between some schools. They want to win.
Yes, definitely.
They want to win. And they're proud about it.
Yeah.
You mentioned below, the primary school, what proud. They've won so many years in a row. High school, they got a bit more opposition.
Yes, it's coming.
Especially there at the Tshwane region. But it's so healthy to see. There's schools which riders are joining the school because how the school acknowledge equine.
And I think that's how it kind of started originally, is there were kids who were riding and they were being told they have to do a school sport. And they were saying, but I do a sport.
Yes.
And they needed the acknowledgement from the school for equestrian.
I don't know what everybody's experience is, but my daughters horse riding were their sport. They could stand proud between their peers at high school because that school acknowledged their sport. Was highly competitive. They had a fierce team, equine team, a second team. They got first team blazers, like the first team rugby.
Nice.
It was done. The school acknowledged the best dressage, jumping, equitation, all disciplines, all 15 disciplines. But what we need as parents, as a responsibility, we need to provide an environment where children is proud to do horse riding among their friends.
Netball, hockey, horse riding.
Otherwise, horse riding will never grow, and we will never support this lovely sport which we all love. We do this because
We
we're
definitely
blind.
do it for the passion.
Yes. And we need an environment which we can provide the children to compete proudly among their peers. We got often criticized, but horse riding is not one of the top 10 sports in the educational department. We are not on the list for the top 10. But we frequently meet with the educational department. They have a big need that these sports, like horse riding, which were previously not accessible to everybody in the industry, in the community, do a lot to make it more accessible for everybody in South Africa. 6% of all our classes is now ridden by previously disadvantaged people. You can say, but Jan, why is it not 20? Why is it not 25? But it's still the highest in our game.
I was going to say, I think
game.
that's highest in all of our disciplines.
So we're proud about that. And we're proud about the Department of Education that understand these barriers of entries, for instance, like costs, and a school don't have the infrastructure.
And have accommodated.
Yes, and accommodate that and support us from the sports council level to SASCOC. They are very supportive, and we invite them frequently to our prize giving.
Yeah, I hear you say that and I know this is a question that's come up before, that SANESA is under the Department of Education. So is there an educational mandate that SANESA should be fulfilling within the equestrian space?
We are providing the environment for inter-school league.
Thank
That
you.
is our mandate. That is what we must provide. And we must extend the equine sport to, without discrimination, to as wide as possible number of learners, without any discrimination on race, color, language, financial capabilities, and we must build up the sport to stand proud amongst its peers on sport basis, rugby, cricket, netball, all of that. That is our mandate.
So similar to another school sport, like if your child was going to progress in netball, you would then outsource coaching, specialist coaching from beyond the school sphere.
It's 100% it. I can participate in the school netball team without having an outside trainer to train me in the finer, let's take tennis. There is some sports, these top 10 sports, which schools allocate the training facility so that their teams could be so good as possible, so that their children can go to the inter-school league to be selected for the Tshwane or the Gauteng team and get colors. What our sport work is that the training component of that must be provided within the discipline environment of where the child enjoy his sport. It was 2 podcasts ago that you put training as a discussion. It is a highly complex scenario. How do you take any discipline?
Take any sport.
Take any sport. Is there an entry form box on when you enter the Easter Festival and say, my trainer is X? No. You can ride, subject to the rule of the class. So SANESA's core mandate is to provide the school league under the rules of the SAF and their disciplines, take into account that mutual responsibility of providing it on an educational basis.
Mutual responsibility.
Between SAF discipline rules and the educational side of it.
Yeah, and sorry, we do have a question from James who says, how is SANESA collaborating with the new safeguarding program? Will there be safeguarding officers in place?
James, thank you for your question. We had discussions with the SAF about it. We are very keen to bring that to the table to protect our children. We recently had a discussion with Shirley about to bring the safeguarding officials first from our shows. James, I can report we haven't yet officially had them there from the SAF, but we have had discussions how to extend it, because we realize some children are being abused by some level of coaches. And it's if the children is representing development side and not the high-end performance side, their riding style is easily being abused, and quite often on social media. And we won't allow that in the future.
I like that. I think also I can say from my interview with Safeguarding that they are looking for officers all the time, and there just is a short supply of people willing to put their hands up. So, James, if you're willing to become a safeguarding officer, please do go onto the SAEF website, and they are looking, I think the national, Tanya van Meerlis is the national safeguarding officer. Catherine Page is the Gauteng branch. I'm not sure the other ones, but they're actively looking for people to help them to expand this program. And I think the safeguarding is a great example of something where we all agree it needs to happen. Everyone's going, yes, and then they say, who's going to do it? Yeah. And everyone's quiet. Yeah. So I think our sports, and we said this earlier on, it's no one area in the sport is not needing input. We all need input, but the safeguarding definitely is one of those examples where we need people to put up their hands and get involved.
Maybe I can just add to that. If let's take Gauteng Central here where the interview is. Fiona and her team, elected committee, is on the day at the show. There is a procedure if somebody is not satisfied with something that a child has done, or adult, or a judge. There's a complaint procedure like it's normal in our sport, where you can write a complaint.
Is the complaint procedure also available on the website?
Yes, and documented, and the form is available.
Thank you.
And there's a show office. So you can write a complaint from a judge to a child, to your competitor, to your friend, to your parents, to whatever, and we handle it from that side. I said the other day in a conversation to the SAF, I'm very proud about our parents and our trainers and our children. As I sit here, I can honestly say to you, I haven't got one legal aspect on my table.
Must be one of the only disciplines, Jan.
It's really, and it's a compliment to our predecessors, and it's a compliment to rules and regulations sorted out, published, and it's a compliment to 114 elected people that run
and amicably resolve disputes
as best they can. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I have had it in the past. But I'm just saying it is.
Currently, for this 1 minute in time.
For 1 minute in time. Maybe after today I will have a few. But I'm very proud about our parents. I'm very proud about our competitors. I'm proud about our children, how they enjoy the sport. I'm proud on how passionate they are to compete. I'm proud how they love their horses. I'm proud how multidisciplined they ride. I'm proud how they strive to be the best. Put pressure on mum and dad to say, Mum and dad, I need to train more. I want to ride more. I'm proud how they accept rules. You know, it's very tough.
I think something you can be really proud of, Jan, is and we quickly forget things when things do go wrong, and they do go wrong. They go wrong everywhere. The standard at the last Nationals, there were many comments from many people on the quality that has improved over the last years, especially I think for people who reside close to the Gauteng region, to be able to come to Cape every Nationals for whatever, to just come and coach or to watch, to see the difference over the last, I would say, 5 years is quite marked, that there's consistent improvement.
It's not, thank you for the compliment, but it's not ours.
No, it is
trainers that. It is actually a compliment for the trainers of our industry, because that's the biggest exposure where they can teach. It's a compliment for the judging of all the disciplines. compliment for a high quality venue, because then the children can ride as best as they can. And it's a compliment for the selection criteria, because then the best
cream is rising to the top. That's
rising
leading by
to the
example.
top. And I did the other day in vaulting, there was 3 international judges. And I asked them, have you ever, and they judge, the FAI judges, and they're not only for vaulting, they're for dressage and jumping. I said, where do you judge over the world? So in America, Europe, and some of them judge in Australia. I said, have you ever seen a structure like SANESA? Ever, anywhere in the world? And I did my own research. The only component of this industry worldwide that compared to us is in Australia and New Zealand, where they have an inter-school league for the highest end. There's nowhere in the world where there's an opportunity for a child to begin at level 0 and end at level 7 and get acknowledgement at school level, subject to the school want to do it, but there's an opportunity to do that. And to go through the structure into the graded environment. If there's something that we do excellent in the equine industry, is this school structure doesn't exist. From the SADC countries, I have inquiry from Botswana, from Namibia, and say, please help us. Because what we see, we want our children to be able to ride against your children. Endurance children, saddle seat children. So there's something in this that does work. There's something in this that stands on its own legs, because we don't feel threatened by the graded world. We want our children to ride.
We want to feed the children into the graded system.
As wide as they can. Our children love horses. And if they can ride every weekend, some of them would ride every weekend. And we want that. That's why we expose our children to the sport, because we know what it does to their soul. And we know where they're going to end up.
Way rather have your child on the back of a horse than in a shopping mall.
I agree.
Jan, what are some of the challenges that are facing SANESA?
We need to provide better and better and better in our core responsibility to be the development arm of the sport. We need to provide an environment where children are safe, where they want to see with no limitations if this is not their future. We always need to be responsible towards our horses. Goes without saying. So these safeguards that we got, we're going to protect them. Quite often, we get, a child does a level 1 working riding, level 1 showing test, pre-Caprilli level 1. Why can't they ride 6 classes? We stick to the principles. So we need to do what we're doing better every day. And we need to work better with the discipline. We need to be accepted with those people that doesn't love us, and there is some of them, that
it's horses, Jan, there's always going to be people.
We must share what we are proud of, because we're just here to do our fiduciary job as best as we can. We have no other intention. There's 4 employees. Nobody else gets benefit out of SANESA except the children. And we must share it more widely from what we do today. And thank you, because it is what we need to do better.
Someone said the other day, we've all got the golden thread through this, which is horses. And that's ultimately, as you said earlier on, that's why we're all here. Jan, you did mention welfare. And I know, and there again, I want to stress that there are welfare issues throughout the sport. If there are welfare issues or concerns at SANESA level or at a show, what is the correct way to approach and engage around that? I know you said that there's a complaint form. I know that there are meant to be marshals at a show. I think it's twofold. I know in the rest of the sport, hopefully people look at their peers and realize what the standard is. But if there is a clear welfare issue, which some people have said and they're concerned about, what is the correct way for people to escalate that?
I don't know about one qualified vet on my structure. So I'm always careful to tell my people that we are not vets. In our game, we got people. So sometimes welfare is abused for competitive benefit. We always try to stick to the rules, get the vet in, get the vet to make a ruling, get the vet to make a ruling before the next show, and comply with all the industry norms. Welfare of an endurance horse and welfare of a showing horse is different.
That's a valid point.
I'm not saying that one is not looking after the horse. On the eye, it looks different. And it's important to understand within 15 disciplines what is the requirement. The hoof length in the saddle seat class and the thickness of the shoe and what is allowed and acceptable there is different from what is allowed and acceptable in the showing class or equitation class. It differs per discipline. But we always revert back to the rules of the discipline, what is fair towards the animal, what is fair in animal welfare, and we try to do our utter best to comply it on the day and make sure that it's not abused for the wrong reasons. The welfare officials, sometimes we have had it. That horse looks thin. It's maybe the main competitor of the other child. So that must be taken into account. We comply
I think you said
with
earlier on there children around, and I think we must just handle it a little bit, perhaps more tactfully.
Yeah, and a child riding a school pony must understand the child's impact on the school pony. It's quite different, the school pony by the riding school that determine how the horse look and how it's fed and all of that, and not necessarily the child. So the child emotions in that process, that's how you communicate it to the owners, how you communicate it to the child, take into account the emotional side of the child. We try our utter best to do it correct.
Nice. And Jan, what is coming next for SANESA?
I think SANESA needs to grow. We need to make sure that SANESA become closer and closer to a preferred sport for more people. We need to find interesting funding mechanism to involve a wider spectrum of South Africans' children into our sport. We're very blessed with the support that we receive from the SAF. It's part of the yearly 4 programs. They support us to bring children to the national championship.
I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Compliments to them. We yearly have per region a process of subsidizing children's cost towards the entries of the shows. We have a process where regions can apply for children, then we subsidize the total cost of participating in the sport. But it's not enough. It is a highly expensive sport. Out of my university training, I'm close to understand how to make a calculation of how to make finance work better. And it's an extremely complex calculation because everybody thinks, yeah, just subsidize the classes. But that's not the real cost. The cost is to train the child. The cost is to get the child to...
The show's the cheap part, actually.
Yes, to get him to the training environment. We're proud about the number of employment that we do provide in the industry, the number of grooms that we provide.
The knock-on effects of
yes,
equestrian
so we're
is huge.
proud about that. But we can't forever and a day hide behind that. We must find other solutions. We can't be a sport in South Africa and don't find an active solution how to broaden it. That's a massive challenge. And if you ask me what's a challenge for the future, we're proud about the sponsors. We're proud about Western Shop and Toyota participating towards SANESA.
They've been really wonderful.
Wonderful.
And essential.
Even Western Shop during COVID supported us, although shows were stopped. I can't praise Dion and the team enough. I can't praise Toyota enough. And we plow it back to make it as cost effective. As I said, we don't allow to make profits. Yes, we have some year profit, some year loss, but we comply with the non-profitable organization. But we plow it back to the whole group. What we need to rethink is a model, but I think the whole sport needs it. How do we bring people into the sport, taking into account the complex cost structures of horses, and how do we make it work? I don't have the answers on that. I just know we all better start thinking responsibly about this.
We need more people to put up their hands and get involved.
Yes, because it's not just, 4 classes at 240 Rand, okay, subsidize the child for so that, plus nationals, plus Gauteng final. So let's say I'm in for 2,000 Rand. That's not.
It's a big picture.
It's the big picture. And then which children will provide another child riding their quality horse? And which stats will provide,
that's a very interesting discussion.
Provide that horses for this upcoming market?
How do we pay it forward?
How do we make it work? And
I think there's not one of us, Jan, that hasn't at some stage benefited from generosity in the industry.
Yes.
And we need to all be very mindful of that, I think.
The structure provides a generosity environment where all of our children could ride at 240 or 265 Rand a class. It is a benefit to ride 4 classes at 265 at graded level, at graded judges, graded environment, with the best judges in front of you, because there's volume in it. And it's plowed back right through the structure. So it's plowed back through children which probably could pay a bit more. But then the educational side comes. How do I decide this child have the right to that and this child don't have? We quite often approach and say, can't we give prizes to the children? I said, you can, but then you must provide it for every child. Are you in for it? Because it's quite important. You must do what you do for one, you must do for all. But that doesn't provide an environment where we can adjust this challenge of our sport. And maybe a sport like vaulting have a bigger opportunity, or discipline like vaulting, for instance, compared to jumping. Vaulting can start with on the barrel. You understand? So maybe we must start thinking outside the box and taking hands with those disciplines that really have the opportunity at a relative lower cost structure compared to the others. But then, is it horse riding? It's a beginning of a vaulting horse, is the barrel. But we must start somewhere. We must do something to do it.
I think I'm really looking forward to actually speaking to vaulting as a discipline, because vaulting overseas is one of the foundation disciplines where they all start. So
vaulting got
a great opening point for many riders.
Yes, vaulting does that. Yeah, but I was invited to, as I said, they recently invited 3 FEI judges, and
I believe we're no longer a developing discipline as vaulting, because we've had people attend world championships and they're doing too well, even though it's such a small sport in South Africa.
And a lot of compliments to the South African children, and a lot of compliments on how they discipline on it. Yeah. Mr. Wright in Gauteng is doing an excellent job. So there's such a big space in all the disciplines. There's a good space for all the disciplines to participate. Just the growth, as I said, in Western Mountain Games in the countryside. We
hopefully just carry that across to all the
discipline, the child can practice on his farm, the farm, in the countryside. It doesn't.
Yeah, and I have some children neighbors. I would practice it in my backyard.
So it's a lovely sport.
Jan, is there anything else you would like to add to that? I'm sure.
I want to say thank you for the SAF and thank you for everybody that is doing their utterly best to help us to become better. You know, you can always say the glass is half empty, but we try to see the glass as half full. And we like to learn from critics, and we like to learn from the industry, and we like to learn from people which criticize us and take the best out of it. And I must say, the SAF structure, it was really, when I was vice president of SANESA, it was a us-them scenario, and it was a big fight. It was always a fight. And there's a change of guard, there's a change of attitude, there's a change of taking heart. Just how this podcast was advertised. It never happened 5 years ago. And compliments.
Thank you.
Compliments to the SG, compliments how they support us, compliments to the disciplines. It's really to give every year a sign of a memo of understanding, publish it, judges coming to us and say, you do this wrong and that right. We love that because we are passionate to build this and we want to make this bigger.
I love the attitude of welcoming criticism and saying it's an opportunity to be better. It's hard. It's not easy, but it's great. It's progressive.
We do let those criticism flow, which we think is not important, but we try to learn from it. And so grateful about 114 elective people that give their time.
The volunteers make our entire sport go round.
And so we're very grateful.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for I'm sorry you have such a long drive home now to the other side of Pretoria. Thank you for coming out. To everyone who joined us this evening, thank you so much for joining. This was the podcast covering the SANESA partnership between the South African Equestrian Federation and the South African National, I'm going to mess this up now, National Schools Association. Thank you very much for joining us. Please join us again next week, Wednesday at 7 o'clock, where we will be sitting here again from the horse's mouth.